In the previous session, you got familiar with Bezier handles and realized what we should do if we want to move the circle on the curved path. For example, I create a keyframe for this circle in the position section. I move the CTI a few frames and move the circle. Of course, before doing this, you have to move the anchor point. Press Ctrl Z and move this anchor point with Y and place it in the middle of the circle. Hit V and move the circle in this frame. And in the same way, I move the CTI and move the circle with it. Now, as you can see, the Bezier handles are not active, and these movements are not curved. The reason is that we enabled its option from the Edit menu and Preferences section, and then General. When this option is active, it causes these curves to be linear instead of curves. If you want it to be curved, hold Ctrl-Alt and click on these points. Using these handles, you can also change the curve and make it smaller or larger. We learned this in the previous section. In this session, I want to teach you an automatic method. For objects that fly in the air, instead of using this method, you can use the method that I'm going to teach you. For example, you have a rocket and you want it to move on a path you determine. Or for example, you have a bee that you want to move in a certain direction. I will delete these keyframes and teach you a new method. I will move this circle and place it here. Activate the motion sketch option from the window menu. With this option, you can move an object in a direction. There are some settings in the right panel. In the capture speed section, you can set the speed of recording movements. In the smoothing part, you can specify the smoothness of the movement. That is, the smaller the number, the more number of the keyframes will be produced. But the higher this number, the less number of keyframes will be created for us. For now, we will proceed with these settings to familiarize ourselves with the work process. Then we will change the settings. When we click on the Start Capture option, the mouse will turn into a plus sign. You have to click and move the mouse to determine the path of the circle. As you can see, by moving the mouse, the path of the circle is drawn. Just like the movement we created before, but with a different method. In the timeline section, if you look carefully, you will see the keyframes that have been created automatically. If I play the video, you can see that the movement of the circle is not very natural in this direction. Now I will delete these keyframes, and this time we will try more smoothing. I will also move the circle here. I change the smoothing number and set it to 5, for example. This time, if I click on Start Capture and move the circle, the number of keyframes created will be less. You can see that now the number of keyframes is less, and the smaller the number of keyframes, the smoother movement we will have. I delete the created keyframes again and set the smoothing number to 10. I click on Start Capture. You can see that the bigger this number is, the movement handles will appear, and we can modify our movement by moving these handles and delete additional keyframes. For example, we can delete keyframes that are close to each other. I zoom in on the timeline and select this keyframe and hit delete. You can see that this curve is deleted from here and the smoother movement is created. For example, I click on this point and press delete button. In this way, its keyframes will be deleted in the timeline. And I can even edit this point, like this. So you can create this motion automatically with the motion sketch tool and then, if necessary, modify it and delete its extra keyframes. As you saw how smooth and beautiful the movement of the circle was. Hit space on the keyboard to play the animation. You can set the movement speed from the capture speed section and record the movement again. You can reduce the number of keyframes with the Smooth tool. I do for you to understand. As you can see, the number of keyframes is large. To reduce the number of keyframes and smooth the movement, first select all keyframes or click on the position option to select all keyframes. Select the smoother option from window menu. The smoother option does exactly the smoothing work in Motion Sketch, but after you have created the keyframes, exactly like the current scenario. We created the keyframes, but now we want to make it smoother. Enter the desired number in the tolerance section. For example, I enter 10 and click Apply. You can see that it reduced the number of keyframes. Now we can manage the movement very easily. Delete the keyframes manually or change their curve as you wish. If I play the animation, you can see that the motion is smoother and it's easier to manage. The number of the keyframes doesn't need to be large. The smaller the number of keyframes, the smoother the movement and easier to manage. Now I will give a practical example so that you understand this topic. I delete this layer and select the polygon tool from the toolbar and draw a polygon. Without releasing the mouse, press down arrow on the keyboard to decrease the size of the polygon and create a triangle. Without releasing the mouse, rotate it and specify the angle of the triangle, like this. You can also increase its length in the scale section. Remove its chain and make it larger from the x-axis. You can also change its anchor point. Press Y button and place it exactly in the middle of the triangle. Press V and move it and place it here. Suppose it's a rocket and it's supposed to travel on a curved path and leave the scene. We can use the Motion Sketch option. I set the smoothing number to 10. I also increased its movement speed a little. For example, I set it to 130. And click on Start Capture and stop. Press Ctrl Z to delete the created keyframes. Then hit Ctrl Alt B to expand the work area. Press P from the keyboard because it is supposed to be created in the position. In this way, we can see the created keyframes. Click on the Start Capture option again and create this path. Now the problem is that the rocket doesn't change its direction, which we have to correct it. We can also edit or delete the generated keyframes as I explained earlier. To change the direction of the rocket with the path, from the Layer menu and from the Transform section, I choose the last option, Auto Orient. The shortcut for this option is Ctrl Alt O. As you can see, Auto Orient is off by default. We must choose the second option, Orient Along Path. Hit OK. As you can see, a triangle rotates in the direction of the path. After selecting this option, the triangle may rotate, but in the wrong direction. We have to fix it. Go to the first frame and hit R on the keyboard, and change this number to move in the right direction. We were able to fix the movement problem. The Motion Sketch option is not used much in motion graphics, but since it was one of the After Effects tools, I explained it in this section. I hope you learned a lot from this video.